Welcome everybody, my name is Tuchiniwa. I'm a Twitch streamer and from time to time I produce some YouTube videos. If you haven't seen the first video on this particular topic, don't hesitate to go back and watch that video. It is not really required, but it gives a very good insight in the basics of automation and producing a MAM. I'm going over in that video on the various tools that are at your disposal. I will go step by step. There will be on the bottom of the video in the descriptions the timestamps, so don't hesitate to jump in the particular topics if there is one particular topics that is interesting to you. I am going through the logic of choosing the right shape and then assembling the shape and then finally colorizing it. I am using the new tool given to us by the programmers, which is basically the pipe gate. There have been some MAMs out there without this one. This one is going to use it. Disclaimer, this is not supposed to be a high output fast MAM. It is just a simple example to see how it works, so it gives you the means to make it yourself and maybe even make it bigger. I myself am streaming the game on a regular basis, so if you want to see me doing it, don't hesitate to jump in. Without further ado, let's jump right in. Here you basically see the various tools that I explained in my previous videos, so don't hesitate to go back to that if you want to know more about those. Also very important, I briefly touched on how to decompose a shape into its various layers, so you basically see here the various layers and how to understand what this shape is made of and the coloring of that shape. Again, don't hesitate to go into the previous video to see that. The other thing we just touched on was the sorting of the different elements, and also more in detail explained in the last one, and go back to that, but we will go over this more in detail. Last but not least, we started seeing the automation of the stacking in our previous video. This will be more in detail in this video. So as a first step, what I want to go through briefly is understanding how to basically get the one shape here which we need, so that it is actually giving us the elements to do the whole shape. This one I'll go into more detail in this video, is explaining which shape she lets through. Okay, so coming back, my first step of doing a MAM is to be able to have all the different shapes. So I basically have an extractor with the square shapes. I have an extractor with the round shapes, circles. I have an extractor with the wedges, so again being cut into its pieces, so you just see here extraction. And finally I have an extractor with the stars. So with these four elements I am able to produce any shape in the game on one layer. The first step is to filter through which elements we actually need, and I have two models here. I have the large one, which is basically showing more in detail what is being done, and then I have the same model here but more compact in a smaller element, and basically then giving this less space so you can produce this faster. Let's quickly go through here how this works. So this is the shape that we try to produce, and as shown in the first video I decompose it. So here I look the first element here and I say, is that a circle? If yes, then you let it through. So this obviously is not a circle, so he makes a comparison with a circle and he says no, it's not a circle. Then I rotate the shape once, so now it becomes a circle on the top right here. I compare again, is that a circle? Yes, let it through. Next one is obviously a wedge. Is that a circle? No, don't let it through. And then the last one, is that a circle? No, don't let it through either. So from all the circles I have, I only let one through, which is the top left. And I basically arrange my shape so that I have here the top right, top left, bottom right. So they are in the right shape. So I do exactly the same for the wedges, and obviously the bottom left is a wedge, so he lets that one through. I do the same for the top right, which is a star, and eventually here is exactly the same. It is just more compact onto one layer, so I basically took away all the bells and whistles around, which makes you see better what's going on, but it's quite compact and it will only let through the squares. So at the end of the day, we have the 4 elements to do the shape. So that's the basis of every single shape, is having the different elements. To be clear, we are not looking into pins or colors in this video, so this is a basic shape, but we will get into that maybe in later videos. So once we have this, the next step is to colorize those. So we need to define whether we need to colorize them or not. So this here actually defines whether it needs to be colorized or not. Again, we have here our shape that is being read through the channel. It is basically split up into the other shapes and then the top layer. Now he is looking at the color. If I take a monitor here, if I put a monitor down here onto this one, onto here, well, I actually have them already here. So you see this one is pink, this one, what, pink, this one is magenta, this one is white, this one is gray, this one is blue. The specificity of the gray is that it must not be colorized, so there's nothing to do, so you can actually bypass the whole colorizing of the shape, but if there is a color needed, it needs to go through the colorizing process. So this is actually pretty straightforward. I read the color of the lower shape. So the first one is this shape on the top right, then the top left, bottom right. So this one reads the top right always, then I turn, then the top left becomes the top right, I turn again, and then 4 times I read what it is. I see the first one is pink, white, gray, blue. Now what this one does is pretty straightforward. If there is any gray color, it will let him through. And if you look, this is my colorizing process, will get through that, but it actually is bypassing the whole colorizing process. Now the other ones go down here, and they are basically going into the colorizing process. We'll go through one of the colorizing process in detail. It is quite straightforward. So we know that this here is the bottom right, this here is the bottom left, this here is the top left, and this here is the top right. So we just need to remember where which size, which shape is, and then send it through that particular line. So how is the colorizing process working? We have the 3 colors that come in, basic. Then we do a first mixing of the blue and green, which becomes yellow. We do a second mixing of the blue and red, which becomes magenta. We do a third mixing of the blue and green, which becomes cyan. And eventually we then mix the cyan with any other color, which becomes white. So in this particular case, I'm just mixing the cyan and the magenta to obtain white. Now, how do we know what color this should be colorized? So it is quite straightforward. We are again taking the sign, the shape, reading it out. So we are unstacking it, reading it out, and we know the magenta, white, gray, blue. So the first one is blue, which is here. So the signal just goes over here, goes down, and I am saying, is the signal which I need here blue? Yes, no. If yes, let the blue through. Is it red? Then let the red through. So here basically I just have the various colors that are ready to be used, and the only thing I'm doing is I am comparing which color I need with the valve here, and I basically shut down the colorizing of this. Now the blue one is open, so blue goes through. this here comes through, gets colorized, and then goes on to the next one. The same happens on the second shape. However, the second shape is gray, so they all close. There's no color coming through here, so nothing is being colorized. This is just the rest of the belt that is still there, and it will just block anything. This one goes to white, so you basically see this one is white, goes through, and now this one is colorized white. And finally the last one is the magenta, and we end up with all the shapes that we need. So here we bypassed all the coloring, so we end up with a blue, gray, white, magenta shape in the right place. Now we have these. Now comes the challenge of assembling them. I've been pondering about this for quite a while, and I came up with this, which is a pretty straightforward stacking. And my plan is now to go through the stacking in order for the final shape to be done. So I have been struggling quite a bit to come up with this layout. I've tried various solutions. I went through all the logic and eventually came up with a very simple idea of how the stacking goes. Okay, so this is the layout, how it looks like and how it functions. Okay, we do not know the final shape, so this must be flexible. Eventually we can have a shape coming here only, or we can have one only here or one only here. We can have a combination of these two, we can have a combination of these three or these three or all four. So we do not know what comes in before we define the shape. I devised a small logic here which helps you understand how this works. The idea is pretty simple. Let's say a shape comes in here. So if we only have one shape, it must not be stacked. If we send this into the stacker, it will block the whole system. So I will bypass the stacking. So here I will basically bypass the stacking if there are no two shapes on here. If we don't have a shape here and here, the stacking will be bypassed. So we have an AND logic here. So if we have an item coming in from the right and the left on both sides, then we will basically let them through. But if we only have one from the other side, we will not let them through, so we will bypass. So any item coming from here will end up here, and any item coming from here will end up here too. Now there's the second possibility is there's one on both sides, in which case it will go through and it will stack and it will end up here. Now these two lines can come together because we will never have a situation where we get an element from here and from here. It's an either or. Either they go through here or they go through this lane. So if we have one here, it goes here. So we do the same on the second one, and we end up now with shapes coming either from here and from here and from here and from here. So we end up with two lanes. Now the question is, will we have one or two lanes, and in which case do we have one or two lanes? So if we have an element coming from here and one from here, we will have here. If we have an element from here and from here, we will also have two. And this is the last one also. These will also be stacked. So what I'm saying here is, if this one is on or this one is on, that means we got something coming from the left. If this one is on or this one is on, we have something coming from the right. So if we have something coming from the left and something, we have an AND gate, so this is an OR. So if we have something from the left or the right, from the left or the right, then it means we're gonna have a shape on both sides. And here, if we have a shape from both sides, we need to stack it. So last but not least, here he will basically in this case stack, and then we will end up with the final shape. So here we have now the same logic of the stacking, but more condensed, we have the 3 deviations with the 3 stackers. So when the shape runs through here, this will be the final shape. This is the logic of it again. So we first check the AND gate. Is there something coming from the right and the left? Is yes, then you stack it. Is there something coming from the right and the left? Yes, then stack it. Now here, is there something coming from the right or the left? Then you say there's something coming. Is there something coming from the right or the left? You say something is coming. If something is coming from both sides, stack it. So that's the logic, also more condensed. So if I lay the logic over the stacker, this is what it looks like. It basically will come in and it will stack it accordingly. So here we have it in practice. So we basically see 2 shapes coming in here. He's not deviating them, he is gonna stack them. 2 shapes coming in here, he's not deviating them either, he's stacking them. So we will end up with a shape on both sides, and it will basically stack them and then go to the final output. So in this particular case, you see here that this is the shape that we want, this is the shape that we get. And this is how you do a basic shape. Now the next steps would be, well, let me take an example and do another shape just to show how this is working. So here, so take an example of another shape. This is the shape that is being configured. So it's the final upper layer here, and we're gonna make a circle white, star blue, circle uncolored, and star white. Confirm. Let's see. Okay, this is the shape that looks like the upper one, the 2 whites with the blue. We can, okay, if we look here at the process of the filtering, we notice there is no square going through, there is 2 circles going through, there's no wedge going through, and there's 2 stars going through. Now obviously I use here my compact version and the previous longer version, as this is only proof of concept and not necessarily a final MAM. Now all the shapes come up here. He's checking which one needs to be colored. So 3 of them needs to be colored, 1 needs to go through. So you will see here there's the wedge actually still going through. That is due to the fact that it takes some time. Here come the circles for them to go through. So they will bypass here and they will end up here and then being stacked. Now in terms of coloring, we have blue, gray, white, white. That is also working. So these ones is bypassing, and we just need to wait until the final shape arrives. So we actually want this shape, and we currently have this shape. Obviously there's still the shapes in the pipe from the previous build, but you will see after some time how this will work. Now this of course is a one-liner which only produces 1 line, so 180 shapes per minute. How can you size this up? There's 2 ways. Either you copy paste this over and you make it bigger, or you can basically take this stacking logic here and then do this with a 1, 2, 3 stackers, and then take the whole pipe always, go in here if it needs to be stacked here, and then go there if it needs to be stacked here. So you basically take the logic this logic here. Instead of having a 4 stacker here, you basically would have a whole platform of stacker, a second whole platform of stacker, and a third platform of stacker, and then feed through everything in 3 lanes onto these stackers so that it actually goes faster. Okay, let's finally Okay, let's finally see if the new shape here is coming. Okay, this looks more like it. I think we're getting it now. And here it comes finally. I was like worried. I was a bit worried. Because I was like, oh, he's gonna end up with 2 stars. No, it's working. So here, okay, that's the final shape. Slowly but surely, there's still some other shapes in the pipeline. But certainly over the next couple of seconds, there will be only the right shape. So eventually I actually see here that there's only the right shapes coming in, bottom, top, and these two. So yeah, so here we got it. That's the final shape working properly. Good, that's it for today. In the next video I will probably go through how to stack these once we have the final shape, and then run a size up, and eventually I will try to tackle the next level, which is the pins and the crystals. I know they are a little bit more complex, so I need to wrap my head around those. Until then, well, I hope this was a little bit helpful. If you have particular questions or any suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comments. I would be happy about a like, I would be happy about a subscribe. And until then, I might see you on my Twitch channel or in the next video. Cheers, bye!